The Fantasy Formula One Podcast. I'm Paul. That's Ben. And this is everything you need to know about the state of fantasy Formula One and a lot of things you need to know about real world Formula One leading up to the 2025 Chinese Grand Prix. To know where we're going, we first need to look where we've been. And so far, we've been to Australia, and that was a disaster.
You got a lot of rookies on the track for the first time. You have some people, surprising us a little bit. You have a couple truly tragic moments that I'm talking about Hajar that hopefully he'll be able to overcome with some therapy and some more hugs from
Right.
Hamilton's dad. And what a way to start the season! It had everything.
For anybody who didn't watch it, but yet you're listening to this, first off, thank you. Second off, there were 6 DNFs. The issue was the rain. It was just pouring rain. And they had a guy spin off the track on the warm up lap. They had 2 people not last the first lap. One of them was Carlos Sainz, which broke my heart and every
Yep.
bracket I'd ever made. I don't feel like we got an actual representation, a representative run of how good these drivers are. And so by and large, I'm not going to be changing my fantasy team
That was
going into it.
I don't know if you stole my notes or
Nope.
what, but one lesson I learned last year is don't knee-jerk react to anything, but especially week one. You've got like you said, you've got 6 rookies. It was a rainy day. Everyone is getting a feel for their cars. And none of what you saw today, with the exception of Max Verstappen and Lando Norris being who they are,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you cannot base the remainder of the season on this race. I mean, again, case in point, Isaac Hajar throughout practice, throughout qualifying, he was doing a solid job. Um, don't know what happened. Again, rough way to start your career, but
Oh,
what
gosh.
happened at the start of that race was not indicative of everything that preceded it. But Australia was Australia and nothing else.
As far as winners and losers go, we only have one race, so this is pretty easy. Winners was obviously McLaren and Mercedes.
Oh yeah.
Why? Because they're like some of the only people that didn't DNF. So I was really impressed with Kimi Antonelli, though. Maybe because he was one of the only rookies. He was the only rookie in a good car that didn't spin off the track.
hmm
But I mean, he did a really good job. Max Verstappen, George Russell, Nico Hulkenberg, fantasy wise, man. Look at that. You never thought Nico Hulkenberg would be what
20
P5 in
points.
fantasy with 20 points.
Yeah. In week one, did Kick Sauber already surpass its points total from last season?
Yes, yes,
Because
I
I think
did see
last
that.
year, Zhou Ganyu, not on the grid this year, was the only one to achieve any points. And I think it was in either the final or penultimate race. And I think he got a total of 4 points.
The one thing I do want to mention is right down here, all these the negative points. Again,
Yeah.
we've beaten it up. We can't focus on it too much. It was just a weird race where over a quarter of the field crashed.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna personally like I'm keeping Liam Lawson on my team, and we'll go into builds in a minute. Carlos Sainz, absolutely, we're not getting rid of him. Like if you believed in Carlos Sainz before, you should still believe in Carlos Sainz now. This isn't representative of the rookies.
Sure.
How about that? I know we already said it once, but this isn't representative of the rookies. We expect a lot more from all these guys. This race was all tire strategy and trying to not crash. And as soon as Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc stay out one lap too long, gambling the strategy, and they tumble down the order, then you know it wasn't on the rookies. Before we get into our teams, we're going to start doing a league review with the F1 Live. So I enjoy following this league. This was my guilty pleasure last year, and I want to have
Okay.
it be part of the show this year. So these are the people who literally their job is to be around F1,
hmm
and they all scored in the double digits just like us.
Oh, this
So
is great. This makes me feel so much
yeah,
better.
if you watch F1.com, like their coverage of F1 TV, their coverage of the Grand Prix, which I do, first off, it's amazing. Second off, these are all your talking heads. And like Laura Winter, and she won their league last year. Ruth Buscom Divey, she was a former F1 strategist. So Julian Palmer raced F1. I'm sorry, as soon as your people who are in the trenches get horrible points, then you know it wasn't the way it was supposed to be.
Sure.
But more on
Yeah.
that later.
But so I mean, so uh weird circumstances surrounding this race notwithstanding, I look across my 3 teams and I employed completely different strategies for the build out of each team. And
Okay.
as a result, I had a 171 point spread between their three values. And, and again, I think it speaks to some of the must-haves that we've discussed in episodes past.
Yeah.
So I've got Team Fancy Car, Team Rosso, and the Commuters. And so the fancy cars, that is, I don't worry as much about my drivers so much as having two good constructors.
Okay.
And surprise, surprise, that was my top scoring team with 130 points. So I had Ferrari and Mercedes as my constructors. I also had Kimi Antonelli. He's like my one good driver on that entire team. And then I've got the commuters, which gave me a cumulative negative 41 points. And that's with Piastri on the team,
Oh my
but I have
gosh.
I have Piastri and Lawson. So I've got McLaren and Red Bull representation as well as Hamilton. Then I've got Bortoleto and Hajar, but my constructors, all I could afford after that dream team kind of is Williams and Alpine. And so my cumulative point total was negative 41. So it's again, it was Australia. There is that factor. Absolutely. I don't expect to see the spread be that wide. However, at the end of the day, your team has to start with two solid
Yeah.
constructors if you want to have a chance.
No, agreed.
So that was a fun little case study. Um, I'm gonna give myself another day or so before I try to do any tweaking of the teams yet. Like we talked about before, I have signs on two of my three teams. I know he lost me points this past week. I'm not worried about the guy. I want to see what it's like in dry driving conditions, just because of the three teams he's been a part of throughout his career. Um, which I believe was Renault and then Red Bull and then Ferrari. From when he has joined the team to when he has departed the team, that constructor has on average gone up in the constructors championship by 3 spots.
Oh,
So
really?
he is a force multiplier wherever he goes.
My best team was OMG2, and I'm not doing anything with this. I still like Hamilton. Like he
Yeah,
was right up there neck and neck with Charles Leclerc. And I think once Hamilton figures out the car, he'll start doing better.
yeah,
This is oddly the team I kind of want to do something different with. And that is because Max Verstappen was good, but he wasn't the ultra dominant force. It was McLaren.
sure.
But the question I'm wondering is if swapping out Red Bull and Williams for like the Mercedes Ferrari or like a McLaren Williams and getting Oscar Piastri or Lando Norris up here, getting rid of Sainz, and kind of going that sort of build. So like let me see. I'll tinker with the team real quick. We won't stay too long.
Oh, you're fine.
But if like I can't get rid of these, if we do something like that, because it's there we go, like with George Russell, something like that.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if there's just not going to be enough on the vine because McLaren put up a poo ton of points, and assuming that was with Oscar Piastri spinning out and finishing at the back.
sure.
So anyway, so that's the one move I'm thinking about making, but beyond that, I'm just going to keep it the way it is. So for the Chinese Grand Prix, it is his first sprint weekend, and I'm kind of flip flopping my opinion about sprint weekends, and that is that I used to think they were the time to get all the points.
Hmm.
I think now it's probably the time to be careful to not lose all the points because there's twice as many possibilities to get DNFs, and there's only a third of more points on the board. So you double your liability, but there's only 30% more possibility for gain.
Say that
Uh,
one more time for me. I'm sorry.
my premise last year was that if there's two races, there's twice the chance to get points. So you would want to use your 3x, you want to use your wild cards and things like that on your sprint weekends.
Okay, yeah,
But as soon as you DNF a sprint, you still get negative 20 points. So there's twice the chance to get penalties. And there's only 30% of points available in the sprint race.
yeah.
So this year, I'm going to, instead of trying to figure out where the best place is to spend all my tokens and all my chips and stuff during the year, I'm going to save it all for the second half of the season and waiting for the last like 4 or 5 Grand Prix when things are really well established and you know who's good and you know who's bad. I'm going to use specifically my Limitless and my 3X. I should have used the no negative last weekend, but hindsight being what it
Right.
is. But at least that's my take on sprints. What do you think?
I think the potential is there on the sprint weekends. The logic tracks for me, but I don't think it's as simple as that.
Okay.
Um, I'd be really gun shy about using it this early on based on the fact that we are operating on one very messy week of data.
Hmm.
Anything could happen on any race day. However, when you've got a level of consistent performance, I think it's a lot easier to take that leap and use those chips on that sprint day. But I would not do it at this point in time.
Agreed. I think that makes sense. This track is full throttle 55% of the time. It's considered a medium downforce track with medium to high tire degradation. Percentage of the time the top three qualifiers finished in the top three was 50%. So basically, this is like a right down the middle sort of weekend. It's
Sure.
not impossible to overtake, but it's not really easy overtaking. Qualifying matters, but it's not the end all be all. For the pit stops, they did a two-stop strategy.
Yeah, how did you know what? I didn't pay too much attention. How did Oscar Piastri do last week?
So Oscar Piastri did. He was doing well. He was like P2 going into like the second to last lap.
Okay.
But then, and I really wish at some point we need to get to the point where we can play clips on this because he and Lando Norris both went off the track in the same turn, and Piastri got beached, and then the
Right.
whole field passed him as he was in reverse trying, and he backed up onto the track, and then continued.
Oh,
Yeah, it was just devastating.
that sucks.
And
Okay.
it maybe wasn't the very last lap, but it was pretty close to the end, and it was, yeah, it was
Well,
rough.
I don't know that I necessarily let that influence my decision to suddenly, scoop him up. But Piastri, we know he's solid. The guy's
Yeah,
won races. That would be if you haven't and you can make it dump to clear some capital. That might be a good pickup.
for sure. Completely agree. All right. Well, I think that's about all we got. Do you
I
have
think so
any parting
too.
shots or saved rounds?
No, I think we're this is the new Lean and Mean podcast. We're talking about a little bit more. We're discussing more elements of the show, and hopefully we're doing a little bit more of an efficient job in getting that information out to you. Thanks for sticking with us, and we'll see you after China.
All right. Cheers.